The Champaign Public Library strives to provide accurate and timely information. The information and tutorials provided in this video are accurate and current as of the date of the recording. An individual's device may not match all the steps in the tutorial based on updates to the technology. You may wish to refer to help guides written for your specific device for updated instructions. The views expressed by individual presenters are their own. Thank you.
All right. Welcome everyone to today's webinar. Today we are talking about getting to know iPhones and iPads. And I am Susan Winkler. I am our technology librarian here at the Champaign Public Library. And with me today I have Rebecca Van Dusen, who is a library associate, and she is actually going to be our instructor today for all things iPhone and iPad. And I do want to give you a little bit of information about what's happening here at the library, and then some information about Zoom, in case it's your first time in Zoom. And I want to welcome everyone to our spring 2021 session and season. We are very excited to kick off our new season, which goes from January through April. And so we do have some classes that we did not run in the fall, and we have some classes that are repeats. You are, of course, welcome to attend any workshop. You can attend it a second time if you want, third time, fourth time, however many times you want. So I do want to mention we are open for curbside service, meaning we can get your materials to you curbside. We are also open for all of our virtual programming, and we are also open to answer phone calls and chat. So if you have any questions, you can always contact us over phone or through email or through chat for us to answer your question. And we do also have our Book a Librarian service open, and you can contact us to have a one-on-one appointment to get technology help or help with other things in the library. So, and then I would like to cover a little bit about Zoom, in case this is your first time using Zoom. If it's your first time, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're happy that you were able to make it into Zoom. Down at the bottom, you should actually see in the bottom left corner, you should be able to adjust your speaker and your volume. In the middle of your screen, you're going to have two icons. One is going to look like a little chat bubble, little comment bubble. That is the chat. You're welcome to post questions in the chat throughout today as we go along, or you can also raise your hand. So the other icon you see is a little raise hand button, and you're welcome to raise your hand too. If you have technical difficulties, I'll reach out to you and see if I can help you with those. But if you'd like to ask a question and you want to ask it verbally, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you so that you can ask your question out loud rather than having to type it into the chat. So that's, let's see, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, if I did, I apologize. You know, Rebecca normally also hosts as well as teaches, so she's gotten her her flow down for the introduction very well.
It takes a little bit of
I'm still
practice.
working on mine just a little bit. But I do want to go ahead and introduce Rebecca. Rebecca Van Dusen is a library associate here at the Champaign Public Library. You've probably seen her working at the information desk and also helping with the tech workshops. Hi, Rebecca, how are you today?
I'm good today. How are you?
Excellent. I'm also doing well. All right. I'm excited to learn about iPhones and iPads today.
Well, I am excited to teach it because I love Apple products.
Yay.
So let's go ahead and get started.
All right. You can take it away.
Okay. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint presentation. Let me minimize some of the stuff on my screen here. Can you see that?
I can, yes.
Okay, let me get into the actual presentation. Can you see that? Is that working?
Yes. Yep. We can see the PowerPoint.
Is it just the slide, or do you show everything else?
It's actually within PowerPoint, so we don't see the slideshow itself yet.
Okay, what's going on here? I think it's because I'm on two screens that it's like having a weird. Hold on a second.
Okay.
I think I know what the problem was. When I shared it, it like went to the other screen instead of this screen.
Oh, okay. And I did spotlight your video just now too, so. Okay.
Why is it doing that? That's weird.
If you need to, you can just turn off that second monitor and it should go back to just being on one.
Let me try it again.
Okay.
There we go. I think that works.
Okay. Yep. We've got it now. Yep.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. That's part of the game when it comes to technology. Okay.
So of course today we're talking about iPhones and iPads. So if everybody wants to write what their device is in the chat, then that way we'll kind of get a feel for what everyone has. Now of course you don't have to have an iPhone or an iPad to attend today. That's okay. We often get people attending that are interested in learning about them because maybe they're getting one, or maybe they're you know, thinking about buying one for someone else, or you know, they just want general information. So welcome everybody. So what are we talking about today? So we are going to talk about a lot of basic stuff. It's sort of an intro class, so we want to make sure that we're at the beginner level. So we're going to talk about iPad and iPhone buttons, so all those physical buttons that are on your device. We're also going to talk about how to navigate your home screen and what all that entails. We'll also cover settings. We'll talk about apps, more specifically how to get an app on your device, how to open an app, how to move an app, and how to delete an app in case you don't want it on your device anymore. And we're also going to talk about the task manager. The task manager will help you like close apps that you have open or switch between apps that you have active. And we'll talk more about that. So for iPads, there's a couple of different types of iPads. So there's the regular iPad, there's also an iPad Pro, an iPad Air, and an iPad Mini. And the main differences between all three is that some of them have higher processing power, like with iPad Pro. A lot of people use that because they want to do things that involve a lot of processing power, like maybe they're using Photoshop on their iPad. iPad Mini, I have an iPad Mini and I like it a lot because it's more handheld than a regular iPad. It's sort of akin to the size of a Kindle, and it's easier for me to handle it if I'm like reading a book or doing something like that. But again, it's your own personal preference and you can choose whichever one that you want. There's also different models of iPhones. So I don't know how far back the oldest iPhone works, but I believe iPhone 4 and 5 are still out there. There's also iPhone 6 through 8, and iPhone 10 was the major shift in their design, so they moved away from some of the buttons that are on the screen. And then the newest iPhone models are the iPhone 11 and iPhone 12. And we'll talk more about some of those differences as well. So for the iPad buttons, let's go ahead and let me show you live what some of the buttons are. So let me stop my screen share and switch my video so that you can see what I'm looking at. And I'm also going to go ahead and turn off the overhead lights. So give me 1 second.
And while Rebecca's doing that, I believe we might have our first question. Just want to double check here.
Okay, so I've got the overhead lights turned off just so that I don't get that screen glare. Okay, so let's talk about the buttons. Let me turn on another light so we can see some of the buttons here on iPad.
I do think we did have a raised hand, but I don't see it now. So if you raised your hand and you do have a question, if you can go ahead and raise it again, I'm happy to relay that question. If it was a mistake, though, we'll just continue on.
I'll just keep going, and if there's a question, then
Yep,
I'm happy to answer. I also forgot to mention that, throughout this, if you have any questions while I'm demoing, I'm happy to show things again or, answer any other questions that come up. So don't feel like you're interrupting. I definitely want to capture those questions as they come in. Okay, so let's talk about the buttons on an iPad. So your main button down here is your home button. It's kind of hard to see.
Rebecca, right now the ring light reflection is right over the top of the home button.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to see if we can keep that on. There we go. We might get a little bit of reflection, but I'll try to see if we can turn that off after the button.
Right like that. That's there you go. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, so that's our home button
like
right there. And some iPads don't have a home button. So it's okay if yours doesn't. It might just be a newer model or a different model than ours. I believe the one I'm on right now is an iPad Air, but we also have an iPad Pro, I believe. And then if we look on the top here, we should be able to see a couple of other buttons. So these two buttons here are our toggle up and down for volume. And the cool thing about these is they do other things than just volume. So for instance, like if you're trying to take a screenshot, you might be using one of these volume buttons. We can talk more about what those buttons do as well. And then we have a button at the top of the iPad, and that is our, Apple refers to it as a top button, but some people call it the power button. It's kind of hard to focus that. Let me see if I can focus it. Might just be too close.
Yeah. Do you want to use the stylus?
Bum, bum.
There you go. Yeah, perfect.
That's the power button, or the top button, which Apple refers to it as. And the top button does a couple of different things. It can wake up your iPad from sleeping. So for instance, if I were to press that top button, you can't really see my hand. Here we go. If I were to press that, that's going to put my iPad to sleep, or it's going to wake it up. That's just a notification that we got. And then if I press that home button, that's going to prompt me to put in my passcode to get into my iPad. So depending on your model, you might have to put in a passcode. You might have to put in your fingerprint. Sometimes your home button has a fingerprint detector built into it that you can program to your own finger. Or some devices like iPhones have Face ID. So instead of typing your passcode in physically, it just gets your, it scans your face and says, hey, that's the person that owns this iPhone, and then they let you into it. So you can also set that up in your settings too, and if you have more questions about how to set that up, you can just let me know and we can cover that at the end of the webinar too. Okay, let's see here. I think, let me get my iPhone just so I can show you the iPhone experience. So this is my iPhone, and I have an iPhone 11. Can you see that okay?
Yes, we can.
So on the side, I have a side button. So you'll see that right there. Instead of a top button, which the iPad has, I don't have a top button. I have a side button. And my side button can also put my iPhone to sleep. It can wake it up. It can turn the power off. It does a lot of different things than just turning it on and off. And then on the side here, I also have a volume up and down. If I can, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a good angle right there.
And then there's another button up here at the top, which will let me toggle on the sound. So if I want my phone to be on silent, which I currently have it on, then I have that little orange showing. But if I want it on, I just toggle it the other way. And now I can have the ringer going or my notification sound going. But usually if I'm at work, I have it on silent, just so it's not going to ring and make a lot of noise if I'm you know, getting a call or a text or something. Oh, my flashlight's on. There we go. That's my cat, Charlie. He's my lock screen. And my iPhone does not have a home button because mine's a newer model. Some of the older models still have a home button. And we'll talk more about how to work around the fact that you don't have a home button if you have a newer iPhone model. Okay, any questions so far?
No questions so far.
Okay, let me unplug my light here. And then let's talk about the lock screen again. So once you wake up your iPhone or your iPad, you're going to encounter your screen that's going to have your security measure in it, whether that's your Face ID, whether that's your PIN, or your fingerprint authentication. So you can have that set up so that it creates another barrier for somebody that maybe you're traveling somewhere and you want to make sure that you have that security measure in place so that if you lose your device, no one can get into it without knowing your like code, or they can't get in it because maybe they don't look like you, so they can't get in through Face ID. So that's just another measure for security. You can toggle that on or off depending on if you want it or not. So we have it on as a PIN, but again, you might have it on as a Face ID or as a fingerprint. It's the same with iPhone. Let me get my iPhone. I have Face ID on mine, So if I were to try to open my iPhone, it's asking me for Face ID. Now, if it doesn't detect my face right away, it then goes to my PIN number that I need to enter. So that's just another level of security. I recommend it if you're traveling a lot, or if you need, if you're sharing a device or something. It's pretty common. So let me get into the iPad. Okay, so now I'm in, and I just entered in our PIN number and it brought me right in. And let's talk a little more about the home button. So let me turn that light back on so that we can see the home button. Sorry, it's super dark in this room without any lights on. Okay, there we go. So our home button here, it's right there. And now your home button is going to do a couple things for you. Your home button is going to bring you back to your home screen. So that's that first screen when you get into your iPad or your iPhone. It can also open your task manager, so then you can switch between apps or close out of apps. Or you can also activate Siri if you press and hold. Now, you might not have Siri activated, so if you press and hold, it's not going to do anything. But you can activate Siri if you go to your settings, and we can talk more about that too if you have questions. And then for my iPhone, let me switch here. I don't have a home button, but if you look at the bottom there, it says swipe to unlock. It's got that little white line. So if I swipe up and it's going to recognize my face, now I've gotten into my iPhone. And with iPhone, it's also got the ability to connect to Siri as well. So if you have that activated through your settings, you can use Siri. You've probably heard of Siri before. It's Apple's version of a virtual assistant. So you can ask Siri things. For instance, you could say, hey Siri, what's the weather like today? Or, hey Siri, can you schedule a meeting for me on Tuesday at 5 o'clock? So it's really kind of convenient and nice. You can also ask it questions like Google questions. So it's kind of useful to use if you need it for that. And again, we can talk about Siri if anybody has questions about how to get that activated on their device. Do we have any questions so far?
Our first question was actually about some of the differences between the iPad Pro and the iPad Air. And I just went ahead and answered it in the chat, but I just want to bring up for everybody else too, if you are wondering about differences between the devices, Apple does have on their the apple.com website, they allow you to go ahead and actually compare and contrast the different versions of iPads right in front of you, and they check mark the boxes next to what each of them has so that you'll be able to compare them.
Yes, they do. I'm going to actually write that down so then when we send that email out, I can send people the compare.
Yeah.
Because I use that quite often if I'm trying to figure out, like, for instance, we're trying to buy a new laptop and we're like, okay, which laptop do we want? So it lets you compare the features across multiple devices to compare what you want in it.
Yeah, so it'll show you the difference in screen size, the difference in the processor, you know, what it's compatible with, if it's compatible with all of the iPad accessories, and what the capacities are. So capacity meaning how much space does it have that's on the actual device.
Yeah, it's pretty useful. I recommend checking it out.
So, okay, thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions, or I can move on to our next thing?
Doesn't look like any other questions so far.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's talk about the home screen. So we touched on it just slightly before, but your home screen is that first screen when you get into your device. So this is my home screen here. Let me get my pen. Where did that go? There we go. So you see all the different apps that we have on our home screen, and there's this ribbon of apps down here. It's called the dock, D-O-C-K. And the dock is really useful because it's a great way to access apps that you use frequently. And if you scroll across your screens, you'll notice the apps in the dock are staying put. So it's kind of cool that you can have all these different screens, but then you have these really accessible apps down here that just kind of stay where they are and you don't have to worry about trying to find them. And depending on your settings and how you have your device set up, your dock may look different than my dock. And you can add apps onto here or take apps off. And we're going to talk about how to move apps later, but that's also an option. So keep that in mind too, that this is always changeable. And the same for your home screens. So if you have apps on your first screen that you don't want there, or you want to put apps on your first screen, you definitely can. So it's not set in stone the way it looks currently. And you'll notice at the top of the dock here, there's these 4 dots. That's an indication of how many home screens you have. So if I were to swipe across, it's kind of hard to tell with the way the brightness is on this, but this one right here is the screen we're on. And as I swipe, the white dot switches to each screen, depending on which one I'm on. So that's an indication of what screen you're on and how many screens that you have. Any questions about the home screen? Let me get into my iPhone also because it's very similar. So I'm on my iPhone's home screen and I've got a dock here. This is my dock. And then I have 2 screens. So I have my 2 little dots there that show I have 2 screens.
Can you zoom in for just a moment on the dots down below?
Yeah. Let me focus it.
Let's see if you can.
Do you see that there?
Yes.
Let me get my pen. That's these 2 little dots here. So you'll see one get more highlighted as I switch. So I have 2, but you might have more depending on if you have more screens. Let me focus that again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And there's also a way to look at the notifications on your phone or your device, like your iPad. If you're on your lock screen, so let me close this. Let me sleep it real quick. And then from my lock screen, you might get notifications when you wake up your phone. And you can, let's see here, let me get that going again. So there's already a notification on my screen, but let me clear it real quick and go to my home screen so you can see the notifications from there. So if I want to see my notifications, I'm just going to drag my finger. Let me turn the light on a little bit so we can see, because I'm going to gesture. Sorry, bear with me. There we go. So don't mind that reflection, but I'm going to show you how to see your notifications from your home screen. You're just going to drag your finger down from the top of your screen. So right now I don't have any notifications, but if I did, they would be there. So for instance, you might have a notification like a text message, an email notification, a notification from an app that you use. It really just depends on how you have your notifications set up within your settings. So if you want to see those notifications in one spot, a good way to look at that is through the notification screen.
Now, Rebecca, is that anywhere from the top, or do you have to pull down directly in the center?
I usually do it in the center because if you pull down from the right side, you're going to get a different screen. Let me try the left side. It looks like it works from the left side, but I usually just do it from the center because that's easiest for me to remember. And then let me go to the lock screen again, just so we can see the lock screen. Oh, I got another notification. But from the lock screen, if you can't see any notifications, you can swipe up from the middle or the bottom of your screen and it should show you notifications. See how when I swipe up, it's showing no older notifications? And I'm just swiping from the middle area of my iPhone or my iPad and swiping up. And I'd lay this out in the slides too, so that it's easier to keep track when class is over. And also it's good to know that if you see a little red dot in the corner of an app, like for instance in my mail app down here, I have a little 2, and I have a 2 in my settings app, that's just a notification for that particular app. So it's telling me that I might have 2 unread messages, or maybe in my settings I have a notification that I need to look at. So that's an indication of something within that app that's a notification. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, I'll go on to the next thing if that's okay. Okay. So next thing we're going to talk about is our settings. And again, feel free to stop me at any time. If I'm doing something, I'm happy to show it again. So our settings app is a really good way to do things that you do often. Like for instance, connect to Wi-Fi, change your screen brightness, change your volume, your notification options. So the settings app is this app here. It's got that little gear shift. It's not really a gear shift. It's just a gear. It's like a bunch of cogs and gears. And that's a pretty universal symbol across a lot of devices. Like with Android, you'll see kind of a similar looking app. But that's our settings app. So if I click on that, that's going to get us into our settings. And then you'll see a different, it might look different on yours depending on how your iPad is. And you can scroll through the different settings here on the left side, or I can switch my iPad so that it's like this. It depends on how you have your iPad set up. Sometimes I like to have it sideways just because it's easier for the webinar. But yeah, you can scroll through your settings here. And then if you were to choose one, then this menu here is about whichever one you've chosen. So for instance, if we click on display and brightness, then I can go in and change any settings to do with display and brightness. And then let's talk about how to connect to Wi-Fi. So that's a super important thing that we do pretty often. Let me brighten this up just a tiny bit so we can see a little bit. Maybe too bright. Okay, I'm gonna turn off this other light too. Okay, so to connect to Wi-Fi, you're just gonna click on the Wi-Fi in your settings, and then it's gonna show me that I'm connected. So if you're toggled to green here, that means that your Wi-Fi is turned on. If I were to tap that and it toggled to gray, that means my Wi-Fi is turned off. So let's turn it on. And then it's automatically going to connect to our Champaign Public Library network just because we have it set up that way. But any other networks that are in your area are going to show up under this My Networks thing here. So yours might look different depending on where you are. At home, you'll probably see your Wi-Fi network plus other Wi-Fi networks that are in your area. So it will change depending on where you go. So let me get out of the settings real quick and go back into it because I want to make sure that we're seeing that we're connected to our network. Yes. Okay. So we'll know we're connected if we have that blue check mark. But also in the top right corner, you'll see a tiny little Wi-Fi icon. Let me try to focus that a little bit. So that's also indicating to us that we're connected to a Wi-Fi network. So that's a good way to know. Let me focus that again. Okay. There's another thing you can connect to through your settings, and that's called Bluetooth. So Bluetooth is really cool because it lets you connect to things wirelessly. For instance, you can connect to wireless headphones, you can connect to a wireless keyboard or mouse, and you can even connect to things like a car. So for instance, my car has a Bluetooth connector in it, so I often connect my phone to my car speakers so that I can listen to my podcasts or a book that I have on tape, something like that. It's really similar to Wi-Fi. You'll want to make sure that you're toggled to green so that it's on. if you're trying to connect to something. And then you'll see your devices that it's detecting here under My Devices. So if I wanted to connect to JBL Flip 4, I believe that's one of the speakers that we have here, I would just tap on that and it would connect to it. I usually don't like to keep my Bluetooth on unless I'm connecting to something. Otherwise, it might use up my battery on my device, because if it's on, it's constantly trying to find something to connect to. So I usually like to keep it off unless I'm connecting to something or looking for something. Okay. There's also a really quick and fast way to connect to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or just some quick settings. Let me lower this brightness just a tiny bit. There we go. So Apple has something called the Control Center, and the Control Center is just like a quick menu to access things. So let me turn this light back on so you can see my gesture. So in the top right corner, if I swipe down under where my battery icon is, oop, let me try that again. That's not what I want. There we go. Then I'll see this little Control Center come up, and you'll see some of those icons that we recognized from before. So with Bluetooth, the icon looks like a little, it looks like kind of a bee with wings in the back of it. That's the Bluetooth icon. And this is the Wi-Fi icon. It looks like a little fan. And then you'll see some other icons that it's showing. So for instance, you'll see like this icon is a timer icon. I have a camera icon. I have the ability to switch to airplane mode. So if I were to tap my Wi-Fi icon, now my Wi-Fi is turned off. Okay, that's just a message that I can ignore. But if I tap it again, that's going to connect me to Wi-Fi networks. So if I tap and hold, then I can see I'm connected to Wi-Fi, Champaign Public Library. My Bluetooth is on. I'm going to turn my Bluetooth off because I don't want that off, or I don't want that on. So that's just a quick way to access some stuff so you don't have to go all the way through your settings menu. Let me show that again. I'm going to swipe down underneath the battery, and now I've got my Control Center. I can also adjust my screen brightness. So if I want to lower my screen brightness or increase or decrease my volume, I can do that here. So I recommend playing around with that. You can also adjust things like that through your settings. So if I go down to display and brightness, I can also adjust my brightness from here. I have the option to put it into dark mode. I can decide whether I want to have my phone auto lock. So that means after a certain amount of time, my phone will automatically go to sleep, so they don't have to worry about it using battery. I have it on never because I don't want it to go to sleep while I'm doing the webinar, but I can switch it to 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever I want. Also, if you go down on your settings, there should be a control center. There we go, control center. And here I can add apps to my control center. So if I wanted to be able to access things quickly from my control center, I can add those here. So for instance, if I wanted a stopwatch in my control center, or I wanted my notes in there, I could do that really quick from the control center menu within my settings. So I definitely recommend browsing your settings and just seeing what's out there, seeing what your apps are doing, and seeing how you can, customize your device to how you use it. And of course, if you have any specific questions about any settings, just let me know. Apple is really good about their support page too, and we'll cover that at the end. But yeah, they're pretty good about answering questions about settings. Any questions so far about Control Center or about settings as a whole?
Doesn't look like we've gotten any questions so far.
Okay, cool.
I do have a quick question for you, Rebecca, just coming from me.
Yeah.
Is there a way with iOS 14, which I know this device has 14, to tell that your Bluetooth is on with an icon up in the top corner? Or is
Oh,
it
you
that
know what?
you will always need to do the control center?
You're right. I think they used to have a little icon that showed up like with the Wi-Fi icon,
Mm-hmm.
but I think they took that away. So I think you have to go either into your control center or your settings to see if it's turned on.
Okay.
So if it's blue, it's on. If it's gray or white, then it's turned off.
Okay. Thank you.
Or I can go into my settings. It's slightly different than Wi-Fi, but I know in the past it's been changed. So if there's a discrepancy, that's Apple's thing. I don't know why they took that little icon away, but who knows?
Thank you.
Yep. Let me turn that down just a little bit. Okay.
Okay. We have someone who has asked if you could discuss the control center a little bit more.
Oh, sure.
And
Let me
maybe
go
if
through
you
our
could show it,
settings.
you haven't shown it yet on your phone, have you?
Oh, yeah. Let me do it on my phone so you can see what it looks
So
like.
maybe you can show what it looks like on a phone.
Yeah, my phone has a little more settings than, let me turn on this light again. It has a little more settings than an iPad just because iPads are slightly different than iPhones. But if I swipe down from my battery area, then I have my control center on my iPhone. So I have a flashlight on my iPhone, I have a timer, a calculator, my camera. I also have a little player here. So for instance, if I was playing music or like listening to a podcast or something, the little player would show here. I use this really often if I'm like, listening to something and I'm on the go, and it's really easy just to pop into this control center and like, pause it, play it, whatever I need to do with my music. And you can also change this through your settings, again, like with iPad. You just go to Control Center, and then you do have included controls. Those are the ones that come automatically, that Apple puts on there automatically, but you can always take those off. So if you don't use a timer or you don't need a calculator on there, I can click that little minus sign and I can remove it. So that's an option too.
And then the ones that are under more controls, can you just speak quickly to what kinds of things you might find in there and
Yeah.
what they would do?
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
for instance, I have like do not disturb while driving. I think you can have that set up so that like if you're driving in your car, it will detect, I think it might send like a message or something like, hey, I'm driving, I can't text right now. There's text size, you can change accessibility settings, like your text size if you need your text bigger, your wallet. So if you use Apple Pay, you can put your Apple Pay in your control center. Or dark mode. I like using dark mode quite often because it helps my eyes. I have really sensitive eyes sometimes and it contributes to headaches for me. So I like to use dark mode. Yeah, I just recommend kind of playing around with it and seeing what you use it for, and you can always change it if you don't like it. That's what I like about Apple, is nothing's permanent and you can always customize it. Does that help answer your question?
Yes. And then we had another question about, can you explain a little bit about the difference between a cellular personal hotspot and Wi-Fi, and when to use which in terms of security, including while traveling? I think that's a very, very good thing to bring up and ask about. So
Yeah. So personal hotspot, that will actually change my phone or my device into a hotspot that I can connect to other devices with. Like say if I was out with like, now this is a pandemic, so I probably wouldn't be out, but if I was out with like 3 friends and we needed Wi-Fi and there was not a network that we could connect to, I could turn my phone into a hotspot and then they could connect to it and get Wi-Fi. Now that might, change my data plan. It might use more data. It might suck up my battery, but that's an option in case you're kind of in a bind with how to connect to something, especially if you're traveling. And then cellular is just my cellular network. So that would be like if I want certain apps to use my cellular network, if there's not Wi-Fi available, Like for instance, if I wanted to make sure I was always able to connect to Google Maps, even if I had no Wi-Fi, I could make sure that it was toggled on. So for instance, I have my podcasts, my Google Maps, those are all accessible without being connected to Wi-Fi. But again, you have to keep in mind that you might be using up data on your network. Does that help answer your question?
I'm going to let the folks respond and let us make sure that we've answered their questions sufficiently. Another question would be, how do you activate Do Not Disturb? So, and maybe you could talk a little bit about what are all the things you have to remember about Do Not Disturb. So I know for me, I sometimes remember to make my ringer go to vibrate, but do nothing about my alarms.
Yeah, so Do Not Disturb, if I click on that, that's going to let me decide if I want it scheduled. Like say I don't want to be bothered for me, I don't want to be bothered from 1 a.m. to 7:45 in the morning. So that means I can't get calls, or I believe it locks down certain notifications. But if I want it for all time, like if I just want to turn it on, if I'm maybe going into a meeting or something at like 2 in the afternoon, I can toggle this on. And then during the time that it's toggled on, I won't get any notifications. It says, do not disturb, silences calls and notifications. So that's an option that a lot of people use if they're going into like a meeting or if they're going to be busy and they can't receive a phone call or something like that. And then I just recommend kind of looking through here, and Apple's pretty good about like giving you kind of a clue about what their setting is. I can also send you the Do Not Disturb information from Apple's support page. Apple's support page is amazing and I always recommend it. So Do Not Disturb is really convenient, especially like if you're going on a plane, or you can even put it in airplane mode if you want to. But yeah, that's what I use Do Not Disturb for, mostly so I don't get woken up at 3 in the morning from a phone call. Does that help answer your question?
You give them a moment to respond here too. Okay. Oh, so also a question about setting it on Do Not Disturb so that you aren't getting any texts while you're driving. Hopefully if you're if you have your phone connected to your car. I know for me, if I have my phone connected to my car, my dash will basically prevent me while I'm moving. I won't be able to read or receive any text messages while I'm driving, while the car is in motion.
Yes, like for instance down here it says Do Not Disturb while driving. For my settings, I have to activate it manually, and then if it's active, then it replies like I'm driving with Do Not Disturb, or I can change that message if I want it to say something else, just so that the person that's texting me knows that, hey, I'm driving, sorry, I can't text back right now. You could make it say whatever you wanted to. And you can change your way you activate it. Like for instance, it says when connected to car Bluetooth. So like Susan was saying before, she has it set up in her car so that like if I were to text her, it would text me back saying, hey, I'm sorry, I'm driving right now. I'll text you as soon as I'm safe, or whatever you want to have it say. I think that was the main gist of that question.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions for Rebecca about settings before we move on to the next topic? No? Okay.
Okay, let me get back into our home screen. So let's talk about apps. So that's super important because that's what we mostly use on iPads and iPhones, apps. So to open an app, it's really, really simple. You're just going to tap on an app. Let me get my pen here. So if I wanted to open my podcast app, all I have to do is tap on it, and then it will open up for me. Super simple. Some of this stuff is new because we just updated our operating system, so we're getting some messages about welcome to podcasts. So if I have an app open, like for instance, podcasts, and I want to get back to my home screen because I want to go to a different app, all I have to do is press my home button. So let me turn my light on again. So I don't want to be in podcasts anymore, so I'm going to just tap my home button, and now I'm back home. And you also should keep in mind that even if you press the home button and the app seems to close, it's still running in the background. So our podcast app is still technically open, it's just hiding in the background. And let's talk about a little more about how to switch between apps and how to close an app in case you want to close it. Oftentimes, if you have a lot of apps open, it might run down your battery, so it's a good idea to know how to close your apps. So on an iPad with a home button or an iPhone with a home button, to get to your task manager, you're just going to double tap that button. So let me do it so you can see. So I've double tapped, and now this is showing all the apps that I have open that are running in the background. So here I can switch between apps, or I can close an app. So let me show you how I would switch between an app. So if I'm on podcasts and I wanted to just go to my app store, I can double click since I know my app store is already open, and then I can go into my app store. If I go back to my task manager and I wanted to close out of all of my apps or certain apps, all I need to do is just swipe up and that will close that app. So I want to close podcasts. I'm just going to swipe up and now it's closed. I want to close my app store. I'm just going to swipe up, and swipe up. And now I don't have any apps open because when I double tap, no apps are showing up. That's how I know that all my apps are closed. Now you don't have to close all of your apps every single day or every time you use your iPad. It's really up to you how you use it. But if you do have a lot of apps open, it might be helpful to close some to conserve your battery. Let me show you how to access the task manager from an iPhone that doesn't have a home button. It's a little different because you're not tapping. So let me open up my phone real quick. Okay. So I'm at my home screen and I've got my podcast open and I want to get into my task manager. How do I do that without a home button? So at the bottom there's my little home. It's on the screen. It's like a bar. To get to my task manager, I'm just going to swipe up slowly until now I see some other apps coming up. Then I can go through my apps and switch to one that I want to use, like Libby, or I can close them. So maybe I want to close this app. I just swipe up, and now they're closing. Let me show that again so you can see. I'm just going to swipe up slowly. It takes some practice. And then let go about in the middle of my, let me try it with a pen so you can see it with a pen also. It does take practice. I swipe up slowly and kind of let go when I see the other apps come up. And then I can kind of scroll through or close out as I need to close out. So that's a really useful tip, that task manager. Any questions so far? I'm happy to show a demo of anything again too.
No questions so far.
Okay. Let's talk about how to move an app. So I'm going to have the light on just so you can see as I'm moving my hand or my pen here to move an app. So like I was saying before, you can always move apps to a different screen or even into your dock. So say I want to move YouTube onto my front screen because I use YouTube a lot and I want it on my front screen. So to move an app, I'm just going to tap and hold on an app, and then I'll see a little menu come up. There's certain things that are always going to show up, which is edit home screen, delete app, share app. These might change depending on the particular app that you're in. But if I click on edit home screen, now you'll notice my apps are starting to jiggle. And at this point, I can move around my apps. So again, this does take practice too, and this is one of the most frustrating things for me, and I've had an iPhone for a while. I don't really like moving apps because it's a little hard sometimes. Don't let that discourage you though. It takes practice and you can get it. I know you can. So I'm gonna hold and I can drag this anywhere I want to. So I want to drag it to my other screen. I'm gonna hold it and drag it until it's on my other screen. And now I can put it wherever I want. Maybe I want it right there. I'm gonna let it go. And now it lives on my home screen. And once I'm done moving, I can click done up in the right corner. And now my apps have stopped jiggling and my YouTube app is on my front home screen where I wanted it. I can also move apps off of my dock. It's the same process. You just tap and hold. I'm going to do edit home screen. And now I can move my app off of my dock. Maybe I don't want my music app on there. And maybe I want Libby on there because I want Libby on my dock. So then I can move it right there. And now I'm done, so I can hit done. And that's how to move an app. There's also, go ahead, Susan.
How many apps can you put on your dock?
I am not 100% sure. I think once it just fills up the whole screen, let me try and see what it looks like on iPad. I think iPhone only allows you maybe 4 on a dock.
So
But let me
how wide the
try
screen is.
Right. Let me try with iPad and see what happens. A lot of tech stuff is just experimenting with seeing what works. Well, it looks like the apps are starting to get smaller. Looks like quite a few I can fit on there. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Probably more than you would ever need.
13.
Yeah, probably more than you would ever need to have that close.
Right. I think that's also important
Thanks.
too about, you know, making something that works for you. And if it's too much of a pain or if it's not efficient, I mean, is it doing that much for you anymore? I don't want to tell you how to operate your device, but if I have 18 different apps on here, it kind of loses its usefulness, to me at least. But again, it's your own device. You can do whatever you'd like with it. Okay, so let's talk about folders, because there is a way to put apps inside of folders. So you'll see here on my home screen here, this is a folder. It says extras and it's got 2 little tiny squares. If I tap on it, then it's going to open the folder and it's showing me what I have inside of the folder. But if I click off of it, now it's closing the folder. So how do we make a folder? It's pretty similar to moving an app. I'm going to click and hold and I'm going to, sometimes it will automatically go right to the jiggling instead of you having to press edit home screen. If it does that, you're still okay. So now my apps are jiggling and I want to put YouTube in a folder with other apps. So I want to put YouTube in a folder with RB Digital and with Chrome. So I'm going to drag YouTube onto Chrome and now it's created a folder. And Apple will populate this folder name for you based on what apps are inside of the folder. And you can always change that too. So if I don't want it to be photo and video, I can tap on it and delete and type in whatever I want. So I want it to be media, I don't know, it could be whatever you wanted it to be. But again, Apple will populate their own. If I click off of that, I'm going to put RB Digital in the folder. I'm just going to drag it right into that folder. And you can always rearrange within the folder as well. And you can add multiple pages inside of folders too. So you'll see the 2 dots at the bottom. I don't have anything on my second page, but I could put something there if I wanted to. And then I'm going to tap outside the folder to get back to the home screen. And then I'm going to tap done because I'm done creating my folder. And you can move folders as well. So I'm going to edit home screen. And then I could move my folder to wherever I wanted to move it. I can also take apps out of the folder. I just need to drop them. Again, it does take practice, so I recommend practicing. This is something that takes time to learn. So if you don't get it right away, don't beat yourself up about it. I make mistakes with moving apps literally all the time. And then I am done. Once you take all the apps out of a folder, the folder deletes itself. Okay. Any questions about moving an app or creating a folder?
So we have a question that's not about moving or creating folders, but about how to find apps on your device.
Oh, sure, yeah. There is a way to find apps on your device. If you swipe down, let me see if this will work. Yep, there we go. So if I swipe down, kind of not from my same area where the notifications were, but kind of from the middle down, I can search, and then I can search for an app. So say I was trying to find my YouTube app, I could type in YouTube, and it's going to pop apps up. It's also going to pop up suggestions from Siri, settings, news. So that's a quick way to find an app if you search for it. Let me show that again. I'm just going to swipe down quickly.
Is that the same for you on your phone as well?
Yes, let me show you on my phone.
Everybody, I just learned something new, everybody. I did not know that I could do that in iOS 14.
There's also another thing that I'll cover that's called the app library. I'll cover that in a second, but we're going to just swipe and then do your search. So say I wanted to search for YouTube. There we go.
Great.
There's my YouTube app. So the cool thing about iPhones is they have that, I can just cover it now. So with the new iOS 14, there's something called an app library that lets you look at all the apps on your phone and also search. So if I swipe all the way left, I'm going to come to my app library. Now you only will have this on iPhone. iPads do not have this yet. I don't know if they will get it, but it's only available on iPhones with the newest iOS 14. So App Library has all of these different little bubbles of apps that Apple has put together based on apps that are on your phone. So for instance, you'll have like the information and reading, social, suggestions, that's Apple doing the suggestions, recently added apps, and you can also search. So if I was wanting to search, I could tap on search, and you'll see a listing of all of my apps alphabetically, but I can also search within that. So if I wanted to search for YouTube or whatever app that I wanted to find, I could do that there. Let me show how to get that again. Let me go home. So if I'm on my home screen, I'm going to swipe left all the way. So left, left, and now I'm at my app library. And I can go in here and access. I like to use this a lot for searching for an app if I can't find it on my phone or I don't remember.
Can you customize what's in each of those boxes?
I haven't played with it too much, to be honest with you, but let me try to see what happens. Oops. Now I'm trying to move apps.
I mean, by that point, you could just move them onto your home screen the same way. So
right. I think Apple made this as a way to quickly search for apps that you might not be able to find. Like maybe you have 5 home screens and you're like, okay, I don't want to hunt for it. I just want to search for it.
Yeah. Or if you have so many apps, but you don't use, you use them occasionally, but not like, for example, if you're traveling, I don't use the American Airlines app unless I'm traveling on American Airlines. So I'd easily be able to go in there and say, okay, flight, whatever Apple has set up as the flight one, and then find it there.
Exactly. Also with iPhones, let me show you the way to delete apps. Let me do the deleting apps on an iPad, and then I'll show it on an iPhone because it's slightly different with the app library thing. So let's do deleting an app. So maybe you've gotten an app that you don't want anymore on your phone, like Susan, you said maybe you don't use your American Airlines app anymore. I know I wish we were traveling, but I don't need it on my phone right now. So I'm going to delete an app. So to delete an app, it's very similar to moving an app. So maybe, let's see what an app I can delete is. Let's delete Zinio because we don't have that anymore. So I'm going to tap and hold. I can either click Edit Home Screen or I can click Delete App. If I click Delete App, it's going to ask me just one more time, hey, do you want to delete this? And then I can click Delete if I want to, or cancel if I decide I don't want to delete it after all. Let me show that again. Tap and hold. If I do Edit Home Screen, you'll see the little X in the corner. If I click that X, that's going to do that same thing. It's going to ask me if I want to delete it, and then I can hit yes, I want to delete it, or I can hit cancel. So that's how to delete an app. The difference on an iPhone is, let me show you. If I want to delete an app, so I don't really want this mouse for cats anymore because I put it on my iPad and my cat loves it, but I don't need it on my phone. So I'm going to tap and hold, and I can do, you'll notice it says remove app instead of delete. So if I click that, I have the option to delete the app completely, or I can remove it just from my home screen. So in that case, if I remove it just from my home screen, it will only be findable by either searching within the app library or by doing the little search that we talked about before. So that's a kind of a good way to hide apps that are on your phone that maybe you don't want to appear here. Maybe you have tons of apps, but you like the aesthetic of only having 2 screens, or it's harder for you to navigate with so many apps all over the place. So that's really useful for iPhones with iOS 14. Okay. Any questions so far? Otherwise, I will go on to installing apps, which is our next thing.
Yes, if you want to show how to add an app to your device, that would be
okay.
awesome.
Let's talk about how to install an app. So you'll want to make sure you navigate first to your app store. So your app store icon is this blue icon. For me, it's in my dock, but it might be on a different screen for you. It has that A looking icon. It kind of looks like popsicle sticks. Let me bring it a little closer. It's this icon right here. Boop. A for App Store. That's how I usually remember it. So if I tap on that, that's going to bring me to my App Store. And here I can browse for apps. So say I wanted to look for a new game that I wanted to download. I can search through categories, or I can search for an app specifically. So if I click on search, then I can search for something. So I can either search for the title of the app or a different type of app. So I wanted to look for a bird watching app. So I'm going to type in bird watching and then hit search. And now it's going to give me apps that are associated with my search terms. So you'll see as I scroll down all the kind of bird watching apps. This Merlin Bird ID by Cornell, that's the one I want. So you'll see it says Get. That's where I can go ahead and download it. Some apps also have prices. So this one says Get, but it also says, you might not be able to see it that well, but it says in-app purchases right underneath it. So that means the app itself is free to download, but you might have to buy certain features to use the app to its full extent. And some apps, they cost money up front. So let me see if I can find one. Yep. Like this one, for instance, is $4.99. So if I were to tap on that, then it would prompt me to put in my iCloud information so that it could charge my payment information. But if I want an app, I can just click on Get. If an app says open, that means I already have the app on my phone or my device. But if it says get, that means I don't have it yet. So once I hit get, I can click install to install it on my device. It might have you prompt you to put in your password. Ours didn't because it just automatically did. But then you'll see the progress of the download up here in the corner. And now it says open because I have that on my device. So if I click open, I can jump right into the app and then I can use it. So let me go back home. It usually puts it on a screen somewhere. Here we go. So ours is on our second home screen. And again, you can always move that to wherever you want. So that's how to get an app installed. Any questions about installation?
Do you want to share some information about what you do to vet apps?
Oh, yeah. Let me go back to the App Store. So usually, first thing I usually do is I see how many reviews it has. Usually if it has a lot of reviews, that means a lot of people have used it. And sometimes you can even go in and you can read like the version history. You can read who puts out the app. So it's developed by Cornell University. And you can read about the app. You can also read the reviews. So you can read the reviews here. Sometimes if I'm really not sure about something, I will Google the app and see if there's like information about it out there. But let me go back to that search. So for instance, like this one only has 2. It only has 2 reviews. That to me is like, I don't know if I want to use that. I like something that is going to have more reviews and more people using it so that it's potentially not as buggy or as glitchy, or I just feel like the more reviews, the better in my experience. And yeah, definitely check out the information on the app's listing and see who's developing it. You can even Google that developer. So if I Google unique apps, maybe they've got reviews about their company, reviews about their apps, and then you can go down and, well, like this person's pretty angry. They think it's a ripoff. But yeah, I would take time if you're not sure to just go through that and do a little research. I feel like especially if you're paying for an app, I definitely would do a little research if you're paying for something.
And Apple does make app developers go through some hoops in order to get their app into the App Store too.
Yes, you're right. I forgot to mention that.
So sometimes, and if they discover that someone is doing something they shouldn't be doing, they will usually pull that app from the App Store. Now, it may take a while for them to know or discover that something's happened or that they're doing something they shouldn't be doing or violating the terms in some way. But usually, if they discover it, then they will remove it.
Yes, good thing you mentioned that because I almost forgot to. Apple is pretty stringent about what they allow on their devices. Versus like if you were to get an Android, you might have some third-party apps that are different that you might not get within the Apple App Store that you might be able to get on Android just because their vetting process is not the same as the Apple App Store. Any more questions about the App Store?
Can you show how to get to categories?
Yes. So if I just got into my home screen on the App Store. If I click on apps, it should load another page where then I can go in and scroll down. I can see the top free apps available, the top paid apps, and there should be a categories down here. What to watch, lots of streaming. There is a way to look at categories. Here we go. So it says top categories, but if I click see all, then I can see all of the categories of apps. So maybe I want to get a travel app. I click on travel, then I can browse the travel apps. Yeah, I definitely recommend kind of browsing around on the App Store to see what's out there and to see how it works. And the thing I like about Apple's site is they give you top free and also top paid. So I don't really like to pay for apps, so I usually like to browse the top free stuff. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Let me write that down also. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about one last thing to do with the new iOS 14, which is something called widgets. So widgets are something that you can get on iPhone and iPad, and they're basically little kind of programs that help you get timely information from certain apps by just looking at them. So let me show you my iPhone because it's got a widget on that front screen. You might have noticed before that I had this large looking app here. That's actually a widget. So a widget I have of the weather app so that I don't have to get into the weather app to see what the weather in Champaign is. So if I click on it, then I can pop into my weather app, but it's super nice to have one on the front because then I can just see, oh, it's 32 degrees, maybe I should grab a heavier coat or whatever. I also have another app underneath it. You can stack widgets, so I have my podcast widget, and I also have a world clock widget because I'm a nerd and I like to see what time it is in Tokyo and London. But yeah, you can stack widgets. Let me show you how to put a widget on your phone, and you can also put these on iPad too, as long as you're upgraded to iOS 14. So to put one on my phone, I'm going to tap in a little area that doesn't have anything. So down here I have some blank space. I'm going to tap and hold. And now my apps are going to start jiggling. But I also see in the top left corner, let me show you that. That's the little plus button there. If I click on that plus button, then I can go into all the widgets that are available that I can add to my home screen if I wanted to. So for instance, I could add a calendar widget, I could add a Spotify widget, I could add a news widget, Wikipedia, my calendar, music. So it's really convenient. Let me add a music widget. So once I click that, then I can click on Add Widget. I can change the size that I want. So say I want my widget to be huge, I can do that. Or I can make it small, like a banner widget. But I like this size, so I'm going to click Add Widget. And now my widget is on my home screen. And I can move it just like I would an app. So I want to move it down there. So once I'm done, I can hit Done. And now that widget is on my home screen. And I can click on it, and it will go straight to that. Like for instance, this widget is a music widget. So it went to my music library and to this album that I had up. Now this would change depending on what music I was listening to. So let me go back here. So now that's my widget. Now to delete it, I can just tap and hold it, and I can either click on the minus sign or I can do remove widget. Let me click that, and I can click remove.
Can you change the size of the widget after you've put it there?
I think so. Let me try. Let me add it again. So let's do the small widget again. Add widget. Let me see if I can edit it. Let me hit done. Let me see if I can edit it. Let me try and see what it does here. Actually, I don't think you can. Once it's there, it's that size, but you can always delete it and add it again and change the size. Does that make sense? So if I wanted to add it again, I could add my, where did it go? Oh, here's some more down here too. So you might have more widgets down here, like I have a Kindle widget, IMDb, here's my music one. And then I want my banner. Let's do a banner widget. So let's add widget. And now it's that big widget. And let me show you how to add this to a stack. So let me remove it and add, let me add it back here as a small widget. And now I want to stack it on top of this one. So I'm just going to drag it right over and let it go. And now you see there's 4 little dots there. So that's telling me I have 4 widgets stacked. So if I click done, now I can, let me show you this way. So you kind of see that white dot moving as I'm switching between.
You
So that's
might
my
want to
stack.
try to hold it up a little closer to the camera.
Let me get it a little zoomed in here.
There you go. There you
So
go.
now I have my stack of widgets.
Great.
Does that make sense? It definitely takes practice like it does with moving an app. It's very similar, but it's a widget. You can also get to your widgets if you swipe all the way to the right from your home screen. So if I swipe all the way right, then I also have some other widgets that I don't have on my home screen. And I can edit them down at the bottom where it says edit. So I recommend playing around with widgets. It's brand new. Apple just did it with the iOS 14. So yeah, I recommend playing around with it. It's kind of cool. I like to have the weather one a lot because I'm a weather nerd and I like to make sure I'm prepared as I leave out the door in the morning. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to cover, but I'm happy to take questions. I love talking about iPhones and iPads. Let me show the additional resources from, let's see, let me share my screen from the PowerPoint. Can you see that?
Yes, we're at iPad buttons.
Okay, let me switch. Now, if you want the PowerPoint, just let me know. We can get that to you. We usually get it to everybody at the end when we're done editing the video recording.
Yep. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat too. We will send a digital copy of the PowerPoint as a PDF to everyone, along with the link for the video once it's ready. We can also print it out for you and have you pick it up curbside here at the library if you'd like, for free. And we are going to hopefully have a little poll here in a moment and ask you about one other thing that we are toying with possibly doing for everyone that's coming for our tech workshops. But I'll let Rebecca talk about the additional resources first.
Okay, so you might see my little video in the corner. It's very bright just because the room is so dark. But I have the additional resources slide up here. I've included links to the iPhone and iPad user guides that Apple puts out. I really like to look through those if I'm ever getting a new Apple device. They make it really easy to look through. Their user guides are available for you to download onto your device or read on your computer. And it just kind of gives you a crash course in how to use your device. So a lot of the stuff that I source for these programs are from those user guides. I also included a link to using gestures to navigate your iPhone. So you'll notice as I'm going through those demos before that I used a lot of gestures, the swiping, the holding, the tapping. So I included a link to that to kind of give you a crash course on how to use gestures. And then I included new features with iOS 14 link, how to create widgets on iPhone and iPad. And yeah, I just recommend overall support.apple.com. If you ever have any questions, that's a really good place to have a starting point. And you can search for stuff. You can just like kind of navigate through that site. It's really, really useful. Even if you don't need help, it's really useful for tips and for guides. And let me put up the upcoming workshops as well, unless anybody has questions or I can demo anything over again. I'm happy to do that too. I know we ran a little bit over, but I think I just got really excited talking about Apple computers or Apple things. Okay, so I'll just talk about what's coming up. If there's any questions, feel free to shoot them in the chat. So we're going to have the next one we're covering is Intro to Android Phones and Tablets. Again, if you know anybody that has one and they're needing some help, you know, feel free to have them come to our webinar. We're also going to talk about Windows computers on January 19th. And then on January 26th, it's our new class, Intro to Apple Computers. So I'm going to be teaching that one. And I'm really looking forward to that one because we just got a new Apple laptop here that it's been fun playing with. So that's exciting for me. And then these are just the slides for Intro to Windows and Intro to Apple. And again, our goal for those classes is just to be like a beginner class where anybody can kind of dive in and learn something about their device, even if they just got it yesterday. So yeah, I have my email up here, my phone. Feel free to email me or Susan. We're both more than happy to answer any questions or go through anything with you. And then also book a librarian too. If you need any one-on-one help, you can schedule that through our website, and then we can work with you one-on-one virtually. Okay, let me escape my, go ahead, Susan.
Okay, sorry, I was gonna say we do have a raised hand. So I'm gonna go ahead and allow them to talk. So all you'll have to do is click on the unmute. Yep, there you go, perfect.
Hi, are you hearing me?
I'm kind of hearing you. I think your sound is a little bit.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear?
We
Susan,
can. You're kind of cutting in and out a little bit, but we can hear you and we can piece together.
My question is, are you going to send the websites you just showed to the list of people attending today, registered?
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
They'll be included in the slides that we send out.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we have a question about whether or not you'll cover a little bit of comparison between PCs and Apple computers in the class.
I won't really cover it too in depth. Mostly what I'll cover is, like for instance, if I'm demoing something, I might say, hey, you might recognize this as being similar to something you would see on a Windows computer, but I won't go into too many specifics about the main. I think that might be a good useful thing to put in there. So let me write that down, because I can put in a slide that is some of the major differences.
Yeah, we could also, I mean, we could also do future, you know, if this is something you're interested in, we could also possibly do a future workshop where we would compare, you know, we'd have a PC and a Mac in front of us and compare and contrast and do some stuff like that about individual tasks too.
That's a good idea.
That's something people are interested in. Again, we love suggestions, we love feedback. So don't hesitate to email Rebecca or me if you have suggestions for future workshops or feedback. And actually, I'm hoping, this is our first time using polls. So we do have a little poll for everyone that's still in the webinar here. We do normally, when we do the classes in person, we have an activity sheet that we go through as Rebecca or I are demonstrating the workshops. We go through and we demonstrate, and then everybody in the workshop tries to do it on their own devices. So what we're wondering is if anyone that's doing the virtual tech workshops would also like those activity sheets, which have the step-by-step practice activities. Some of them are also, you know, like matching terms, or just some ways to kind of reinforce the things that you're learning. If you might be interested in that, I'm going to go ahead and try to launch polling.
I was going to say, we usually do the activities during the in-person classes, but that's kind of one of those things we've been missing out on.
Yeah, so if you'd like, if you can, I'm hoping that this poll just popped up.
It popped up for me.
Would you find it beneficial to receive an activity sheet with an answer key as well, with the workshop handout and video link via email?
Oh, you're not doing it.
No,
And then if you'd like to have the option to complete the activities on your own, to assist with practicing and learning the terms and things like that. You know, if you're not interested at all, that's fine. We're going to kind of just get an idea and a sense of that from the next couple of classes. And if people are interested in that, we'll add that in to the email that gets sent out. So also gives us a chance to play with polls today. So
I was going to say, whoa, sorry. Sorry.
All right.
This ring light was just, I wanted to plug it in to see if I got more light, but it ended up being crazy bright. So never mind. What I was going to say is that we usually like to include the questions that were asked to us during the webinar within that email that gets sent out, just to kind of recap what we covered in terms of questions in case people wanted to know. So, you know, if you have any, don't feel like you're like interrupting or whatever, because we love to answer them.
All right.
Otherwise, I think I've covered everything unless anybody wants me to demo anything again.
Yeah. Are there any final questions for Rebecca today? Thank you to everybody for voting in our poll. For the first time we're doing polls. We appreciate that.
Yes, we've been talking about a poll for a while.
Yes. It's kind of fun to get a little interaction. All
Is there a
right.
hand raised? I see a hand raised.
Yeah, let's see. Yes. Okay, one moment.
How do I get those handouts on the curbside tasks? How do I
Yeah.
request that?
Absolutely, it's a great question. Yes, so if you'd like to have a color copy printed for you, all you need to do is just email either Rebecca or myself, and we can set you up. Basically, we'll go ahead and print them out, and we'll save them at our desk, and then you can come to the library, and you just call and let us know that you're in the parking lot, and we will bring it down to you.
Okay, because I did request one for the Microsoft third
Okay.
one, so I should wait for your email.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we'll let
You know what? I do remember that email. I think I sent it to you digitally, but I can print out a print copy for you. Was it?
Rashmi Kapoor?
Okay. Do you remember what part of it was? I can probably find that email.
It was the third one.
Okay.
Third, Microsoft.
I'll go ahead and print that today and then leave it at the information desk. So whenever you call, it might be a different person answering the phone, but they can bring that out to your car whenever you're here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Great question.
Yeah, great workshops. I'm learning so much.
Excellent.
Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yay. Alrighty. Well, if there are no other questions.
We don't see you, Susan. Your camera's not on.
Oh, okay. I can hear. Okay.
There we go.
Thanks for reminding me. Here, I'll go ahead and unspotlight your.
I did already.
Oh, you did. Okay, good. Okay. You're quick on that one. So, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. Again, we will send those handouts and digital copies, and then if you want a print copy, just let us know. And thank you all for coming. And it seems like activity sheets may be a thing that we add for the future. So,
That's
and again,
exciting.
feedback and suggestions. We always take feedback and suggestions.
Yes.
So.
And questions. If you have any questions after class is over, shoot us an email.
Yes, and again, we always have book librarians too. You know, we can schedule those for half hour to hour in a Zoom call just like this, or over another preferred method, even over the phone. So.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Right.
I had a lot of fun teaching it.
All righty. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning into CUI's TV. We hope you enjoyed the show. This video can be accessed anytime on youtube.com. In the YouTube search bar, type in UPTV6 and look for their microphone logo. We hope you will join us again next week for more local, engaging content designed specifically for Champaign County older adults. Take care and stay safe.